There is always going to be a first time for a brand to show up to the party.
Right.
You can either be the brand that never turned up because it was always, it never felt like it hadn't done it before. I've never been invited to that party before, so why would I go now?
Right.
Yeah, you can be that brand. That's fine. Sure, you'll get through life. Where the growth is, where the true growth, the corporate growth, both on this side of the pond and in Europe as well, where the real growth for brands and products is over the next 10, 20 years, is in them communities that have not been traditionally served.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super excited to be chatting with Christopher Kenna, who wears probably as many, if not more hats than I wear, which is really pushing it. But Brand Advance Group is sort of, to my understanding, a little bit of an umbrella organization for a variety of what you're working on. So I'd love to hear sort of what your typical day looks like and how you're allocating your efforts across these different brands.
Yeah. So, hi, everybody that's listening. I'm Christopher Kenna, British. You can tell by my accent, but I'm based in New York now. I work out of, we have two offices in New York, one in Manhattan and one in Brooklyn. I'm sat in the Brooklyn one at the moment. But Brand Advance Group is a group of companies. One is an AdTech SSP, one is a creative agency, one is a data and insights platform for media planning, buying and strategy. And then we have some owned and operated media, magazines and platforms as well. But all of them, they're different parts of one component piece, which is to help brands reach underrepresented communities. So our AdTech sits on 12 to 1,500 minority owned and operated publications. Our data and insights platform is about what are, African American, Hispanic American, LGBT, Black, Muslim in 60 countries. What are they reading, watching, writing, listening to, why, and how can a brand intercept that and become culturally relevant and stick themselves not just creative that resonates with our creative agency, but also stick the ad in front of the people they've made it for. So yeah, it seems like it's a lot of different pieces, but actually, one was just born from the other. Like yourself, sit with a few other hats as well. So I sit on an advisory board for the Metropolitan Police in London, a similar one for TikTok, a similar one for ITV, and one for the V&A Museum as well. And here in New York, the Glasgow Caledonian NYC University as well. So yeah, don't really know when I have time to breathe. Actually, people won't have known, but when you turned on your camera, Kev, you sort of caught me eating. Yeah. There is no time to breathe or eat or do anything other than cram things in between meetings, panels, and judging D&AD awards. But good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. We forget to set up our Calendlies to leave buffer, right, for bio breaks and eating and those other life issues.
Yeah.
So I'd love to understand what the catalyst was, though, for founding the company. Every company has its origin story, and obviously each of the sub-brands probably had its own catalyst. Yeah. But as far as like that initial, stake in the ground, was there a particular thing that happened that was the catalyst for that?
Yeah. I gave birth. Well, I didn't give birth to them. My ex-wife did, but I had two kids. One of them's black and one of them's white. And I have watched the world be very different to my white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter than it has ever been to my son, Jerome, who's mixed race. And I've been angry at the world sometimes for the way he has been treated different to her. We all know the issues there. But when it came to advertising, and I sort of fell into advertising, I realized I could maybe do something about it. It felt like the whole industry was insane. And what I mean by that is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. And I was watching panels and seeing people and listening to podcasts like yours and, people talking about making better choices in advertising, representing people in adverts, representing communities that are underrepresented, buying Black-owned media, all of this noise, but then just doing the same thing, going to the same vendors, putting out using the same creative agencies, which were then in turn using the same freelancers from the same pockets of people, So it was just the definition of insanity. So I thought I could help them with the outcome, change the outcome, save the insane. Listen to me calling out the whole industry, but sometimes we have to all, including me, have to be called out on our stuff, because sometimes we get caught up in this is the way it's always been. But actually, when our clients are asking for different outcomes, for new outcomes to reach new consumers, so that was a catalyst for it. I realized that the reason why advertising can have such a profound effect on society, like we wear a seatbelt now just because an advert told us to. There was a time when people just didn't wear seatbelts. They got in a car and they drove, and then in the UK we had Clunk Clip, and it was a really famous ad. And then from that day on, the second somebody got in your car and didn't wear a seatbelt, you sort of stared at them a bit more until they clicked on and then stuck their seatbelt on. And you still do that today. And lots of things in society that have been understood through advertising, the LGBT community, when brands have embraced it, pride and stuff like that. So I think, we've got a lot of power and a lot of responsibility, and I wanted to help build a company that can remind people of that. So the very first company was our AdTech business, our SSP, and it was just basically making it really easy and a one central point to buy 100 million impressions of minority-owned media. I want to reach, rather than saying, well, God, I haven't got time as a media planner in a big agency, the publicist, I haven't got time to get in touch with lots of LGBT publications, and the scale I get from one is not going to help my client. So I sort of linked them all together, walled the garden a little bit, and then said, okay, now I'll give you 5 million affluent LGBT males that have got nothing better to spend their money on than your product. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm being a bit stereotypical in that, but it's just to prove a point that, and
it's difficult not to be a bit cynical, right? Because, some of the marketers who have on their media plan that they'd like to reach this audience, it's clearly just because they want their money, right? They want their purchasing power. They want to, become a leading brand within that community. And they're not really thinking, you get the sense like they're not really thinking about the community at all, other than the fact that they have deep pockets because perhaps they're dual earners and no children because they're gay or whatever the case may be, right? So as a result, it doesn't seem like the strategy necessarily comes from a place of good, of caring about that.
You're totally right. But also sometimes, I am an advocate for saying sometimes it doesn't have to. The actual, if a brand, you've got two brands, they're both going to spend £1 million. One of them is spending £1 million in the LGBT community because it really believes in furthering that community. Great, you spent £1 million. It's that £1 million goes to to LGBT-owned publications. They get to feed their families. They get to employ more people, that it actually rises the tide within the community because money is going directly into the community because these are LGBT-owned businesses. The other spends £1 million just because it wants the LGBT community to buy its products, to purchase its stuff. The same rise within the community. There's the same injection of value to the community from that. What it's sat behind, is for people to, I think if you really don't advocate, if you don't allow staff to bring their authentic self to work, if your policies are a little bit skewed towards traditional rather than same-sex couples, if you haven't figured out what you're doing for paternity leave and maternity leave when it's the same-sex couple, all these little things you should be thinking about as well. I would say don't not spend £1 million on advertising because you've not done that. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, get your house in order,
exactly.
but actually,
the point is well taken, because in some sense, the end justifies the means, but there's also a bit of a tightrope walk that some brands have tried to walk there and sometimes failed. I mean, there have been some fairly notable fails just this year with regards to a brand thinking that they can go out and engage with an influencer who they believe represents that community, and all they really need is a shout out from that influencer or an ad produced by that influencer. And even if it doesn't ring 100% true or authentic, where it sort of feels that it's at odds with sort of the core of the brand, they're just so interested in the community, they go ahead and pull the trigger anyway. And then, you end up with tribes fighting with each other because they sort of feel like, oh, that brand's a sellout, or whatever the case may be. So I guess, from your perspective, when you're strategizing around that and you want to retain the authenticity and yet still, deploy those creative dollars and those media dollars where they need to go, how does one, find that strategy that works?
There is always going to be a first time for a brand to show up to the party.
Right.
You can either be the brand that never turned up because it never felt like it hadn't done it before. I've never been invited to that party before, so why would I go now? Right. Yeah, you can be that brand. That's fine. Sure, you'll get through life. Where the growth is, where the true growth, the corporate growth, both on this side of the pond and in Europe as well, where the real growth for brands and products is over the next 10, 20 years, is in them communities that have not been traditionally served. Because how can you have growth in the same ever declining pool of people that everybody's been going for the last 50 years? When, in this city, in New York, half of this city speaks Spanish. Not for quite a long time. A lot of brands weren't really, that was the multicultural, some brave brands did. Well, now you're not going to sell stuff to half the country in about, I don't know, is it about 15, 20 years? Not even that long, is it? Like literally. And I never realized it till I lived here. In the UK, we have the same thing for Indian, Pakistani and Black. Germany has the same thing for Turkish. Brands will be left behind, and some we've seen in the UK, and I'm sure you've seen it over here as well, some big brands that became irrelevant because they never took that leap. A big one to say is Topshop, Topman and Topshop, always stuck Kate Moss in the window in London and said, this is what all women look like. And, Philip Green on his big yacht said, no, just keep doing what we've always done. They're the people that buy it. And now it doesn't exist. Whereas I'm from Manchester in England, and a little brand there called boohoo.com said, no, we're going to show LGBT. We're going to show big plus size models. We're going to show Black and Indian and African American when they're advertising. And there's also Pretty Little Thing comes from there as well, and now look at them, they are this big, massive company that's come out of the UK. It's on this side of the pond now. You got the same thing with ASOS and Pretty Little Thing and Misguided. All these little companies that just did it differently, that are growing 5 times faster than their more traditional counterparts. So the proof is there. The strategy, and as marketeers, we in agencies. Our job, our 15, 20, 25, 30%, if you're a really good agency, managing to get that out of your client. But our job is to be brave on behalf of the client, is to find the opportunities. Our job isn't to just do what the client's always done. That's why would you pay anybody 20%, 30% to just do what I've already done? That's our job. Our job is to be creative with media, creative with creative with innovation. Figure out what's the next thing coming, who's the audience, how do we, and that so answer to your question for strategy, there isn't a one strategy fits all, but you need to sort of see from what we do as a company, and there's, globally it's about 150 odd of us now, where we're in 5 countries. And we're growing because I think we found, we're certainly not got some doing anything different to anybody else. We just do it from a different angle. And that is, look at what a brand stands for and then find the resonance within each community around that brand. We all use pretty much everything that's out there in some way. There is no glass. I'm holding a glass in my hand. There's no glass for white people and glass for black people, and you need to sell that glass to white people and that glass to black people. Now, white and black people, or African Americans and white Americans, or white black British and white British might do different things with a glass. I'm most likely to stick a rum and coke in it. You might not be. So that's just the nuance of creative and resonance and making it culturally relevant.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to talk a little bit.
Glass.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the nuances, right? Because another mistake I see brand managers making is they sort of think that everyone within the community that they would like to define is actually homogeneous, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, they're gay, but they don't think like, well, you got log cabin Republicans, and then you've got the folks at the white party in the Hamptons, and those are different, right? Or so, or the black community, and of course you've got left or right leaning blacks, or blacks from different countries and origins, and still consider themselves from the Caribbean, or still consider themselves from the UK, right? And just assuming that there's sort of a one size fits all within that community ignores the nuance as well, right? And so when you're taking the clients through and educating them on that element and thinking through, oh, well, we can't just actually find a one, is there a one size fits all creative strategy, or do we actually have to find the nuances even within the communities?
You can, what we tend to do is, imagine you line up down below all the different communities that fall within that category of demographic. So black, what does that mean? That's African American. It's people that identify just as black and not African American. It's Caribbean, etc. So you line them all at the bottom, and then sort of cultural relevance to that brand. What do they think, feel, or say about that brand? If you draw a line up from each of them, and it's what they're saying, thinking, and feeling, there will be a point where quite a few of them lines will cross each other. That's your sweet spot. What is the one thing that a lot of these, even though they're very culturally different, identify different, have different traditions, and eat different foods, and different times of the year mean different things, there is something related to your brand that crosses a few, sometimes not all of them. So a lot of the time we'll say to a brand, we're going to stick it in this community as well because they are part of the black community, but actually we don't think you're going to get any growth there. But we found this nugget of information, of insight, that actually really resonates your brand with these 3 or 4 parts of that community. Let's go with that insight, So, and we've done that plenty of times for brands. We do it all the time, daily for brands. Just, it takes deeper thought, and actually what it requires, and, I'm going to be a little bit rude to the industry. What it actually requires is for people to do the original job they were trained to do, the automation and doing the same thing over and over has meant we've not really needed to do, because it was all the same consumers, and because many people before us have already put in the strategy for reaching that consumer, the platforms you use, the media you buy, how much you buy it for, etc. Then there wasn't much of us to do. Mark Ritson is pumping out some great masterclasses, but nobody bloody needs them because we're all doing the same thing over and over anyway. We're just doing what the person who sat in the chair before us did. So I think, we just have to have a mindset of, okay, for the next 2 months, I'm going to be uncomfortable as a brand manager. I'm not going to understand everything that I used to understand. I'm not going to understand this community. What we do need to do is leave our bias and we're there to do a job and we're paid to do a job. We're not paid to decide whether a community is more important than another. We're not paid to decide whether we fully understand what transgender is and agree with it. That's not our job. Our job is to stick that product in their hand. No matter what life choices they've made, we're meant to do it in a safe environment. We're meant to do it in a way that resonates. But that's our job, you can go home and gob off as much as you like about what you think about these communities. That's your own prerogative. But I think sometimes too much of that decides on a brand's whole trajectory. There's some people sat in a boardroom that really don't understand what transgender is. So we're not going to do LGBT because the T is the transgender, and we're going to stay away from that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not your job. You're paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of quid. You're not paid millions of quid to decide whether my son or daughter, deserves to buy your product. You're just meant to find all the people don't want to buy it, need to buy it, make them think they need to buy it. That's our job. So I think if we get back to that, if we get back to thinking of things less data and more context as well, we seem to have forgotten what contextual is. You can reach a lot of communities. You've got this appreciation of cookies, etc. Now is a perfect time for Black media reaches Black people. And then if you know what the context of the article that you're in, a technology article, a sports article, you can do a lot just with them two things. Not a single cookie, not a single piece of data, but you can do a lot creatively with your brand to resonate with someone that is in a Black magazine reading an article about sport. Why would they want a glass? Oh, because at the end of sport, you need a glass to fill with water. If you get a glass, you can save the planet. There's so many. Do you know what I mean? Just that's the top.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, and all of it really relies on the brand marketer comfortable breaking the inertia, right?
Yeah.
And saying, okay, I don't want to just make a photocopy of last year's media plan and do that again, and not really change my creative and do the same thing again. And so there needs to be a comfort level, right? With sort of breaking out of that and really exploring some of the stuff a little bit more. I think to some extent social media has forced that, but then they sort of put social media in its own bucket. And they're like, oh yeah, well, it's an influencer that speaks to that community. And so that's all I need to do to solve the problem. I can leave my regular media plan alone, right? I don't need to change that. I'll just glue this influencer marketing on top.
Yeah.
But the reality is like, some of the social media may be sexy, but there are a lot of channels, that allow you to reach audiences really efficiently. I happen to really like digital outdoor, right? And outdoor in general, because, community defined the old school way is the people who lived in the same place, right? Yeah. And that's where outdoor shines. I don't know if you have any other examples of things like that where, just by geography, for example, tells a tremendous amount about an individual, not just what they're reading in the context of it, but where are they?
Yeah. And you can add to that, you can blend them two together. If you think digital is more sexy than traditional out of home, nearly gone are the days of posters being stuck up. I mean, they're still around. Clear Channel seem to love them at the moment, but JC Decaux hasn't got a poster in sight, but you can blend them two together cleverly. So we have a product. It's called Heat Map. And basically what we do is we've got an SSP and we've got people reading articles. When they read an article, we serve an ad. We don't drop a cookie on that person other than we've served an ad at this latitude and longitude. We matched that to programmatic out of home. So now we can say here in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, if 200 people in the next hour read an article in African-American media, read an article in African-American media about sports, then programmatically look for the screens in Williamsburg that's close to that cluster of people and stick this creative on the screens. If in the same area in the next hour, 200 LGBT people read in Gay Times about sport, use this creative. You can blend the sexy with the traditional and actually be really powerful. You've got them when they were reading, And then they walk out the door and they go, bloody hell, even that ad has me on it, or someone that resembles my community, something I identify to. Bang, you've got them. Because you're right, out of home, I love out of home. Out of home is such it's a community piece of media, and it does a lot for the community, because a lot of the things are on the side of stuff, bus stops, buildings, they have to pay some revenue to the thing that they're on the side of. They don't own the wall. You know, there are TVs stuck on the side of it. That TV's got to pay rent. And that rent goes to the very community. You know, I live in a place called 420 Kent Ave. So it's right within a beautiful Jewish community, you know, and what you see a lot of billboards there. And I know that them billboards pay money to the Jewish community to stick it on the side of their lovely big building. So they should. You're renting a piece of space, just like, you know, if we're renting for our apartment. So it goes right into the very communities as well. Just like digital spend in Jewish news would go into the community because it's run by Jewish people, and so forth. You know, I'm using different communities as examples, but it's all true. And this is what we do. This is what we help brands do. We make sure, you know, that whenever we're working on a product, 70% of the people working on that project will come from the community it's aimed at.
Right.
So that's our first line of making sure that the brand's money is going into the community. We're going to hire the community. A minimum of 70% has to come from that community. That's our sort of USP. Then the next thing is we're going to buy media from that community. There's more ways that your brand money is going into there. Then we're going to make sure the creative resonates. And we're going to buy media, not just digital media, but like you said, out of home. We're going to trigger the out of home in that area, in that community. And so all of that together powerfully brings, you know, I know we won't name and shame, but I know the brand you were thinking about earlier, you know, and you know, they may have wiped $1 billion off, but actually, have you seen what their share price has gone up by now? That $1 billion is no longer wiped off. So yeah, all right, I think you can. It's not the first time that brand has turned up to the party, neither. I think that's worth saying on behalf of the brand, and they're not my client. But that is not. They sponsored the whole of London Pride, the whole of it. They were the main sponsor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not the first time they've turned up. I think some thought maybe could go into how are you, especially when something's in a divisive period of history. The world has been very divisive at the moment about that particular issue, you know. Yeah. And sorry to people going along going, what the hell are they talking about?
I think they'll
Google
figure it out.
Yeah, Google it. Google who lost £1 billion overnight, and you'll find out who it is. But you know, that should never put a brand off from doing it. And I don't think, and from what I've heard, and I know a friend that works on that team, I don't think it has. I think they've sort of went, nah, okay, this particular strand of issue, let's think about that more. But we're not going to show up in these spaces anymore. We're not going, you know, because there's been a lot of mistakes made in straight white media and advertising over the years. Do you know what I mean? Let's be honest. Yeah. It's not like all the mistakes are just because they're a diverse community. There's been some whoppers made just for what is deemed the average population. You know, you can make a bad ad at any point to anybody in any time or place. So I think we just got to get better at making good ads. And understanding and making sure that everybody understands. And, you know, sorry, a shameless plug, working with specialists. We've been talking about out of home. Out of home has a specialist within every agency. WPP, it's got Kinetic. You've got Poster Scope at Dentsu, you know, like there's a specialist. So use specialists. So if when you're doing an out of home campaign on your media plan, you're going to go to a specialist. Then you've got digital out of home, which has another specialist within the specialist. You've got, you know, why not do that for reaching underrepresented communities, cultural marketing, responsible media, whatever you want to call it. You know, use specialists, use like people like me, and there's many others, you know, not just blowing smoke up our backside and saying use us, although I do really want you to use us. But there are lots of others, Group Black and H Code and Colossus and many others that you can work with that can, they're specialists. We are who you're trying to reach. It's detrimental to our business to let you F it up. So let us do it with you. We're going to work twice as hard because we've not that long been allowed to join the party as well. Really join the party. Yes, there's been culture marketing for many years here, but actually the proper spend where Unilever will say, we're going to give $1 billion to companies that help us reach these companies, where WPP says 2% and Publicis says 6%. That party has only just started since Black Lives Matter protests. They've always mattered, but you know what I'm talking about.
I think of brands and potentially even partner agencies as using teams like yours as wing people, right? To go into the party, right? Because if you show up at the party and you've never been there before, it's easier to make a mistake, right? But if you bring somebody with you who's been to the party dozens of times, having a wing person there could be really, really helpful. So that's where that specialization and expertise comes in. To be really important. So I'd love to switch gears a little bit to sort of marketing mix from a branding versus promotional direct response basis. So as folks come to you and they say, hey, we realized last year's media plan and marketing plan's not really where we should be, and we've now allocated a sufficient enough chunk to go after these communities, but we don't know if our messaging should sort of be upper funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel, some mix of those. So how do you advise folks to go into a community from that perspective?
We say in every way that you have done for other communities, that same respect, that same vigor, that same understanding of marketing applies. The only thing that's different is the cultural nuances. Who's going to make it, why are you making it, what will make it resonate, who you're going to put in the ads, where you're going to stick the ads, what is the strategy for reaching it. But there are nuances to that because of the different communities, but actually the ABC of marketing is still the same, and it should be done from an overall strategy level. It shouldn't be something that's tagged on a little bit after you've made the strategy. So we've done our brand strategy, and now we're going to think about a little bit. It should be part of the core. Who are we going to sell to this year? Right. How much are we going to sell, and how are we going to do it? That's where you start with, and then you build out. When you build out your consumer personas, let's look at the ones you've already done. Then let's lift them up and drop them over different communities and see what the caption is. If the caption doesn't seem to grab that many people in a certain community, let's have a little deeper dive. Why does that persona? Because I'm sure there's some people buying your product there. If there is, do we need to make a whole new persona? Is your persona wrong? Is saying ABC1, blah, 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 is that not what we need to talk to this community? Then let's make a new one. You've had the same personas for many, many years, the same anagrams, the same understanding of a consumer, but the world has changed 1,000 times over since you come out with them. So let's see where we are now. What is the new audience? What is the new consumer persona? And then once we've done that bit with the client, or once we've helped them through that bit, then it's like, okay, now you know who you're selling to. Where are they? Where are these people? Are they all still watching TV traditionally, like you thought? No? Okay. Where are they? Where else? Is there other are they on non-traditional channels? Do they over-index for non-traditional channels compared to what you classify as traditional channels? So let's get them in the mix. Let's see. Compare one media plan to another. You'll get a lot more for a lot less on this side. Doesn't mean underpay. But just where it is as a market, it's not found its voice fully yet. It's not found its hour to say, actually, this is the base floor that you can pay for us. Not fully yet. We're trying to help it in some ways on that. So and then the rest is quite, dare I say it, traditional. Just make the ad. As long as you've got the right people and they're going to make the right message. The right message is going to, it's just the same as how you did it before. You're just doing it with a different group of people, aimed at a different group of people, with a little bit of a strategy twist in there to make sure that it resonates and works. Yeah.
One thing that's one thing that's changed a lot since back 30 years ago when I was at McCann Erickson and J. Walter Thompson was it was very much a command and control creative process at that point, right? So there was a creative brief and things didn't really vary that much off of the creative brief. But as my teams have started to engage, for example, in an influencer marketing scenario, that's very different from when, back in the day, you'd use a Hollywood star as your promotional person, right? Where they got a script and they didn't vary from that script either. But now, because so many influencers bring their own audience to the table, as well as allowing you to amplify their message with the audiences that you buy as an agency, right? There's a lot more creative latitude that often needs to be given to the influencer to sort of say, yeah, I love what you've got, but let me just add a little bit of a tweak to it or a little bit of a spin to it, because, they live and breathe that community, right? Because they interact with their audience all the time. So how does one tap into that creativity that doesn't necessarily always come from the brand or the agency? So sometimes even comes from a third party like an influencer.
I think you just, again, find the right partners that can take you to that party. Find your wingmen,
right?
And non-binary people. Find your wing person.
That's why I said wing person, right? I was like, what do you even call it these days?
Find your wing person, and they will introduce you to this, like, the world, as there is always when there's a sea of change, and within advertising, it's one of the best for adapting to change and new products and etc. I would definitely say, and I haven't been in it for very long, not really. But with new change, there's always the kickers and screamers, I call them, the ones that don't want to change. But you've got to look. A lot more product is sold in the world now for a lot less outlay. You can sell 1 million of your product just with the right influencer strategy, making it virally relevant, and you can shift boxes and boxes of stuff, whether it's good stuff or crap stuff, doesn't seem to matter anymore. You can just shift it. That is it's a new power, it's a new medium, it's something that agencies are forever trying to tap into, and so you got to roll with it. That's what the clients want us to take. That's the party they want us to take them to. So I think, I don't know the answer individually for each person listening to this, for each brand manager or agency person. What I do know is you'll never be able to harness that without understanding it or working with a partner that does. Somebody needs to take you there. Somebody needs to make it relevant to you, and then you need to make it relevant to your brand. So explore, go out and learn. Like, I can't say it enough. This is one hell of an industry. I love it. Like, the stuff we can do, the power we wield to evoke emotions around a phone. It was just a phone. But yeah, we can make people laugh. We can make people cry. We can make people want the phone. We can make them really not want the phone. But we do that by creatively tapping into emotions and society and working with fantastic people from all walks of life that can bring different perspectives. It's a little bit like every time I see one of our creative agencies, the one I'm sat in now in Brooklyn, every time I see them bring something to life, it feels like a real life version of Slumdog Millionaire. Do you remember the movie?
Yeah, sure.
And they won the million because of these different things in life gave them the answers that were going to get them from the slum to being a millionaire, winning all them movies. I feel like the creative process every time is that people bringing in different tiny bits of the life that they have lived and then bringing that, and so what brands and agencies just need to make sure to really tap into that is my room full of people that may have been on a very similar journey? And if so, that's fine, sort out your hiring as you go along, but that's fine. There's a lot of rooms like that. So who else do I need, as an external or as freelancers? What do I need in that room so that we can then harness that superpower that is difference, that superpower that is the understanding of things that people that all went on one journey may have missed because it was over there. What was going on in estates or in projects, let's just call them here? What was going on there? What are kids talking about, if it's kids you're advertising to? I would say the flip side to that is sometimes we get too invested into trying to find the next cool thing. Influencers might not be the thing that can sell your product. Don't even worry about it. Actually, your product might not even need to be sold to anyone under 30. So don't even worry about them. It feels like the cool thing to do is to find out what Gen Z or early millennials or whatever the name is for this, just to box ourselves in names all the time. It's sometimes it can feel like you need to know exactly what everybody's up to. You may not need to, in which case, don't clutter your brain with stuff you don't need to know. Do you know what I mean? Like, because we've had that argument with some clients where we're like, yeah, you don't sell to Gen Z, so why do you keep asking us to go and find out stuff and to bring you ideas? We're like, they want your product and you don't need to sell it to them. Let's look at what is a 35 to 45-year-old black man doing, black woman doing, Muslim man, Muslim woman, right. What are they doing? Don't worry about what all the kids are doing. They're loudest, so everyone's looking in that direction. They're doing cool stuff, so everyone wants to be in on it and understand it. But actually, brand manager, let us sit with stick together and let's look at where your core market is and what they're doing. They still do cool stuff. I'm bloody 40. I do cool stuff and I can afford anything. So I'm your core market for anybody that's got anything that's a little bit flashy.
Yeah, what I love about that is that the point is that even within some of these communities, there's still the lowest hanging fruit. So why not pick that first, right? And sure, you have aspirationally this idea that, I would really love to have those people as customers. Well, guess what? They have no disposable income. So give them a few more years.
Yeah, their skin. I've never understood it with Gen Z. So Gen Z have not even got a bloody job yet. Their skin. They're living off bank of mum and dad. Then you've got millennials, just got a house, got a new family, skint as well. No bloody money. The people we should all be going for is 55 and above, because paying mortgages, maybe a little bit older, but paying the mortgages, they've got disposable income, absolute party animals. Because I've been looking, when I was younger, I was looking at older people. I was like, they're so boring. They don't do anything. Now I've got to 40. I've realized that 40 to 50, everybody's partying all the time. They're living life. They can do it. It's not party as in a nightclub in Berlin in a warehouse. But you go around, I go to friends and they're like between 40 and 50, and they've got beautiful big houses and pools, and they're getting wasted, having a barbecue in the garden. They're buying stuff. They're showing you their new sneakers. I do it, as a 4-year-old guy. I'm there at the shop. I don't stand in the queues with all the kids where they're going to wait for some person to bring out a collab. That ain't me. But, I will walk in when that queue's gone and spend 800 quid on a pair of trainers and not blink, because I've got to a place in my life with that. I just think and that a lot of diversity, a lot of first, second, third, fourth generation diversity that has spent in this country and in Europe comes from that age range. And it's a very influential age range as well. Mums and dads and grandparents, very influential. A lot more, and I hope people listening to this understand what I mean with it. A lot more influential than in white families. I think Black, what I know, the communities are from Black, especially Caribbean. It's very influenced by grandma and grandpa, more than I think all of my mates, because I was in care. So, I was in children's homes and in and out of care from 1 to 16. And then I joined the British Army when I was 17. But going to my friends' houses and seeing the dynamic of theirs compared to the dynamic of like a Muslim house or even a Jewish house or, a Hispanic house is very different. It's very different. They're all different to each other, but very different to a traditional white house household as well. There's a bit of a hierarchy in some of them, and that can influence spend, and understanding that from hitting one person, you can get 5 things sold.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
No,
5
understanding whether a culture at the familial level is a matriarchy versus a patriarchy, for example, can make a huge difference in a strategy. So that point is extremely well taken. It's been so great brainstorming with you, Christopher. So I will keep in touch and look forward to watching your continued evolution as you grow the business.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure having you on.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.